Faith Chapter 3 is the third installment of the Unholy Trilogy and follows John Ward as he tries to stop the summoning of an incredibly powerful demon. The game is currently available on Steam and itch.io. Atmosphere. From the very beginning, there's a feeling of impending doom as the game states clearly how many days until the demon will be summoned. This increases the pressure on the player, and by default, whether you succeed or fail, time moves on regardless. The same feeling of vulnerability continues from the previous entries, and are arguably worse due to the substantially rising stakes. It's obvious how weak John is with his slow movement speed and being able to be killed in a single hit. It's clear that you're incredibly out of your depth for the forces you face, which only reinforces the overwhelming hopelessness. Unlike the previous entries, Chapter 3's world is more realistic within its limitations. The lack of life and the music that plays leaves the world feeling on the brink of collapse. The music yet again emphasizes the feeling of hopelessness, and the places you explore, like the clinic or the apartments, feel tainted with evil as you arrive. But things go further and further into demonic territory, and soon the line between reality and hell start to blur. The game really pushes the feeling of hopelessness to its limit. The nightmarish, dread-filled environments are full of unique scares, and it's difficult to know what to expect as you go deeper and deeper into unknown territory. Chapter 3 has the stakes at their highest, and it really reflects it. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. Chapter 3 has a lot of unique scares that are new to the series, and has a plethora of new mechanics that are adopted and tried out for various parts of the story, without ever staying long enough to get used to. Many of them are nerve-wracking to use, like the camera, which isn't anything new by horror game standards, but works incredibly well with the limited graphics of the Faith series. The game still mostly uses jump scares to deal its most potent moments, and there's a lot of very well earned scares in the game, with quite a few that really catch you off guard. The cutscenes are still incredibly unsettling, with the rotoscoping animation contrasting heavily with the limited graphics to make its surreal cutscenes all the more disturbing before getting to the demonic content. The enemies and bosses are pretty varied and are more threatening in this chapter than others, which again works well with the story and atmosphere to make dealing with them all the more intense. Chapter 3 is really trying its hardest to vary itself, and it succeeds with every attempt at something new. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. The sound design feels like it's pushing the deliberate limitations of the game to their limit, with the soundtrack being the biggest in a Faith game so far, from hauntingly melancholic tracks like The Waking World to the more disturbing, frantic and unsettling pieces like the gurgling distortion of tracks like I Am Beyond. The soundtrack is at its most dissonant and abstract, with the chiptunes feeling like they're bleeding out of your headphones and into your ears. The sound effects and voice acting haven't changed a great deal, but the effects on them have, with the hardware limitations left behind to present some more haunting sounds, especially in flashbacks where it excels. The sound design is limited on purpose, but still manages to find a lot of room to spread out in Chapter 3. That's 3 Harry Masons. Gore. The gore is fairly unsettling to see, though limited in its appearance, with red shaded pixels leaving some of what you're seeing to the imagination, though a lot of it is abundantly clear. The gore is nasty in its intent, but not often in its depiction, but it doesn't really hurt any of the scenarios. That's 4 Harry Masons. Story. The story follows on from the end of Chapter 2, with John waking up in his bed to find a letter from Father Garcia telling him of the plans to summon a demon. The cult presence in Chapter 3 gives an ongoing feeling of fighting against insurmountable odds, with the extent of their influence being frankly frightening through some parts of the game. The diary entries are just creepy and unsettling as they were in previous chapters, and thanks to the many locations the game takes John through, there's a lot of backstory to pick up, and many of which are either sad or disturbing. The plot has many frankly brilliant moments, especially with characters like Father Garcia and the antagonist of the story, Gary. This is by far the deepest chapter, making it a fitting finale to the series if this is indeed where it ends. Making the final score 5 out of 5 Harry Masons. Faith Chapter 3 raises the bar to the series all around and really nails everything. It's hard to understate what an improvement this is on a franchise that was already good. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I felt that Gary didn't love me, I was not afraid, and I'd advise you weren't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night.